Good morning, kids. Today we're checking out a brand new video from PopCross Studios. It was The Summoner's Beast, a Demon's Challenge, a PopCross original story and Speedpaint. Let's check it out. Oh, it's a Multiverse Tales episode.
Something has been wrong in the world I oversee for quite some time now, but I haven't been able to figure out what exactly it is. Ancient monsters that I once thought to be myths have reawakened and reappeared, but even many of the ones told to be vicious and cruel in their tales have been fairly docile. This is why it was so odd to see a creature that bordered on being legendary for its protective nature towards humans, seemingly headed to destroy a peaceful village. I'd been following the creature for nearly an hour, and it had a clear heading that I couldn't sway it away from, though I didn't yet realize its target. Any creature or travelers that stepped into its path, it attempted to violently swat away or devour, and few creatures in this region stood much of a chance against it. This beast is called the Tyrnamuk, and it is a drake that somewhat resembles a lean Tyrannosaurus, but is very tall at 130 feet from foot to scalp. Its large forearms and hands appear to be attached by dripping limbs of slime, and muck is near constantly seen to be pouring from its maw. If the scent this muck is giving off is pleasant and soothing, then you know the creature is in a peaceful and protective state. But, as I followed it on that
Otherwise, if it stinks, it stinks.
day, both myself and my dragon ally Violet, upon whom I rode, were nearly nauseous and dizzy from the foul stench. Some of its slime had splashed onto me and my mount, and I felt the sense that the garb I wore would not be salvageable after that day.
Oh, most likely
Often
not.
I am able to either calm a creature or at least direct it towards an unpopulated area to continue a rampage, but this beast was set on reaching a destination. The glowing runes that appear on my arm, which I use to channel and control my abilities as the overseer of my world, allow me to have some sway over the emotional state of creatures in my world. Some I can practically outright control, but my abilities were having no effect whatsoever on the Tyrnamuk. I was also being particularly cautious on that day, because while I'd been off in other worlds helping friends of mine with other quests, my Mount Violet had found a mate of her species and was now pregnant. I was within a week of no longer bringing her on missions like this at all, and knew I couldn't risk her getting injured. She'd been my...
Would that make you a grandfather or an uncle?
Faithful ally long enough for me to know it was my duty to ensure she could remain healthy and strong to give birth to her young. I carried with me on that chase the bestiary of the overseer who'd watched this world prior to myself, and in it was an entry on the Tyrnamuk with information that should have been useful. I read that the beast had a strong aversion to electricity and lightning, so I then used my overseer runes to create the fiercest thunderstorm I could along the path before us. All it seemed to do, though, was make the Tyrnamuk angry, and it continued on through the storm. It was moving in a perfectly straight line, so after all else failed, I cleared away the storm and flew on ahead to see what was coming in its path. That was when I first came to the bustling and unsuspecting village of Seathiel. On broad guess, based on its size, I assumed 7,000 people or so lived there, and they were all in grave danger with this rampaging beast on the way. I flew down near the edge of the village, and luckily on my approach I'd already caught the eye of a group of civilians and guards. I soared down and landed just near them, saying, "Please, warn all you can. A beast called the Tyrnamuk is headed towards your village, and it will be
I wonder what this Tyrnamuk actually looks like. We'll probably see it later on.
Soon. I'll do my best to stop it, but you need to evacuate citizens and raise defenses." One of the guards simply rolled his eyes at me. "Are you joking, lad? The Tyrnamuk is a story for children, not a real creature." "I promise you it is very real, very angry, and headed this way. That's where this foul-smelling slime came from," I said, trying to raise some of the sticky muck off Violet's back. "Go on, stop acting the maggot. Sure, we can all smell you from here, but don't go blaming that on some made-up monster. Besides, even if something was coming for us, we've got Toralei here to protect us. She's slain everything that's come for us the last few months," the dismissive guard said. I didn't have time to ask about this protector he referred to, but I could tell it was likely this village wasn't going to do much to prepare, so I had to get back to doing all I could to keep the beast from reaching them. I rode back off on Violet to get into the creature's path and decided it was finally time to call in a summon. Or an ally of different sorts, if that didn't work.
Alright, the first of the art piece for today's episode is done. And honestly, looks awesome like normal.
By that point, I'd made summoner alignments with 7 different
Oh, hey, it's a hurricane.
beasts from my world, but the toughest of them was a crimson dragon called the Hellwing, and I deemed
Ah,
this
yes.
situation called for its aid. I spun the runes on my arm, and a circle of light appeared before my palm. I could feel part of my consciousness leaping across the planet as I spoke. I call upon the aid of the Hellwing and Rama, summon forth great beast. I waited a moment, but nothing happened. I quickly knew what that meant, as it had happened before. The Hellwing was busy with other matters, or simply not interested in assisting at that moment. The Tyrannus
Hurricane Heath. Okay, yeah, I knew Hurricane. I forgot his actual name.
was getting closer, so I tried to think of what other creatures I could trust with this task. I didn't think the volcanic Cyclops would fare well enough against a beast of this ferocity, so I next tried calling upon the searing Flare Fox, as it was incredibly fast and its flames could be used to distract the Tyrannus and hopefully try to redirect it again. Unfortunately, another call went unanswered. I'd known for quite some time that I needed to build relationships with creatures that I could always rely on, as much as I had Violet for the last few years, but this was the first time it was truly putting the quest at risk of failing catastrophically. I turned and flew back towards the village to set up a defense at its edge. I also decided that it was time to go with an alternate call for assistance. I activated the watch I wore from another world made by a friend of mine, with the odd name of a Mujwawut, and moved through the menus on it to reach a group called the Powerhouses. I tapped on that and spoke into the watch. This is Tayron calling for urgent assistance. If any of the Powerhouses are available, I am in need of immediate help with a fierce monster that's approaching a large village of unprepared civilians. I have tried summoning a beast for assistance, but the ones I trust for this threat have not answered, and
No problem at all, Summoner.
And there
boomed
he
a very
is.
familiar voice through the device.
I was in the gym anyway and could use some more exciting exercise. Hope I don't tear up my pump cover too bad.
Thank you, Heath. I'll open a portal from the T905 Nexus Point to the village soon. I was back at Seathiel within moments, and on approach, saw that there was another person seeming to stand on guard at the edge of the village now. For some reason, the instant I saw her, despite not knowing who she was, my entire body tensed in anger. I landed down near her, dismounted Violet, and
why?
began opening a portal for Heath using my runes. When someone teleports into my world using the Mujwawuts that all my interdimensional allies carry, they can only appear at the nexus point of my world, so I used my Overseer abilities to give Heath a gateway from that point to my current location. I was often anxious using my Overseer abilities in such a way around civilians, as magic was still very slowly becoming a common part of my world again, after being largely dormant during the reign of the previous Overseer. But this young woman didn't seem fazed in the slightest. The guards were right, that is a fierce scent you're giving off. But don't worry, I believe you that it's the Tyrannus, and I'm here to lend a hand. Toralai's the name. I looked her up and down, and a chill was still running through my body by just being near her. But more importantly, I saw no weapon on her. It's nice to meet you, Toralai, and any help you give would be appreciated, but what is your armament of choice? Before she could answer, the near 300 pounds of muscle that is Heath Hurricane Reynolds bounded through the portal in his exercise attire, and held out his hand for a common gesture in his world called a fist bump.
Hurricane reporting
yeah.
for duty, Summoner.
I met the gesture as usual. Thank you, Heath. This is Toralai. She'll be assisting us as well. Heath glanced over and didn't seem bothered by her in the same way I was.
Cool.
Good to meet you, Toralai. So what are we dealing with? And please tell me it's gonna require a Summon Storm special.
I nodded,
Oh, most
admittedly
likely.
eagerly. I believe it is, Heath. Let's see if this beast can handle the full force of a hurricane.
Okay, that was a pretty good line. And especially since the guy is literally the storm embodiment fist. Love it. Next up,
I quickly
Must be
explained the
Toralai.
Tyrannus, then gave a brief rundown of the abilities I'd be using to Toralai, who was completely unsurprised by any of my Overseer powers. She then finally, but vaguely, stated what her own abilities were. Around here, people tend to call me a Darkhatter Mage, and your weather manipulation's gonna be a real help
Decado Mage. Huh, never heard of it. I'm lost.
to me, too. She crossed her arms and tapped her fingers to her opposite shoulders, then raised 2 fingers on each hand upwards and said, Guardicad. Wind suddenly spun up beneath her and raised her into the air. As soon as she did that, it felt as though the Overseer ring on my arm that I used to begin my own weather manipulation abilities was slightly burning. Still, I activated
Ow.
my abilities and created a hailstorm between the town and the approaching monster. I took a shield off Violet's side to hold over my head and instructed Violet to move farther into the village, out of the storm. Toralei seemed completely unbothered by the hail and called another phrase, swinging her fingers before her again. Much of the hail around her suddenly spiraled together into a ball of ice, and she thrust it forward. It shot at incredible speed towards the approaching
Damn.
monster and slammed against its head. The Tirnamuk shrieked and stared up at her as it continued to approach. The beast was nearly upon us, and Heath looked eager to go.
Can you get any more lightning going, Tayron?
I spun the rune on my arm and started feeling slightly dizzy, but 3 bolts of lightning instantly cracked down in the field ahead. The beast snarled at it, but continued forth. Heath smiled.
Perfect. This is gonna be a good one. I can feel it.
Heath is someone
I don't remember. Does Heath have a move called Hurricane Touchdown?
I'm always eager to join in battle in my world specifically, as when he activates his incredible super strength, it tends to draw power from and impact the weather around him. So, if I control the weather to be particularly violent before he attacks, it can help him produce some incredibly impressive impacts.
Oh,
He
yeah.
ran forward and leapt
Oh, that explains what's going on with his fist. It's a mix of the ice and hail with the thunder and lightning. Okay, that all makes sense.
off the ground, shaking the earth as he did. He soared with his fist back directly towards the monster's head.
Concussive hail shock.
The hail around him
Oh.
spiraled up onto his arm, turning to ice, and 6 bolts of lightning all shot onto him, charging him up further. This was the first time the creature actually slowed, but it was too late for it to avoid the strike. All I saw was a burst of light on impact, but as that light cleared,
Epic.
I saw the hail all around the beast soaring outwards in a shockwave. I had to move my shield in front of me to block a barrage of it from striking me. The creature was then falling backwards to the ground, and I hoped Heath had been able to do enough harm to it to ward it off without killing it. My main concern had originally been that he may have slain it, as a blow like that from Heath could have eviscerated any common dragon from my world.
Oh, most
But the
definitely.
Tirnamuk showed further evidence of why it had such a legendary status. Before hitting the ground, it stumbled its legs under it again and managed to stay upright. It quickly found where Heath had landed after the
Don't you know, it's still standing. I don't have a good singing voice.
hit and spat a beam of slime at him. He leapt aside to dodge it, but it swung its head quickly and managed to hit him with a cluster of muck, knocking him right out of the air. He splatted to the field and pulled hard to get the slime off him, but even with his strength, it was clearly going to take a moment. I
Yeah.
sprinted towards him, thinking the beast may try to devour him, but once Heath was down, it turned away from him and headed towards the village again. Or so it seemed. Toralei hovered farther forward and called out, casting another spell. Dialanstui! Lightning burst down above her, then curved past her, guided by her hand, and struck directly along the creature's neck, putting a searing cut into its flesh. Its shriek
That woman, Toralei, or however you pronounce her name, she has something to do with the beast, doesn't she? Like, she called it or summoned it out to, well, literally be a demon's challenge.
shook the field as I reached Heath to help remove the slime from him. He and I then both noticed the same thing.
That monster, is it going for her?
Toralei was hovering up away from the village, and the monster seemed fixated on following her movements. I was still helping tear away the slime as I said, "It can't simply be because she's attacking it, or the Tirnamuk would have tried to finish you off. I've had a bad sense about her ever since I first saw her, but I'm still not certain why."
You know, it doesn't really make sense since, I'm not exactly from around here, but she kinda looks familiar to me.
Heath saying that seemed to spark some familiarity in my eyes as well, though I had
Oh, yeah?
no idea why.
I guess maybe we're gonna find out. Let's go! By the way, still, love the art. Now show the monster.
With more of the slime pulled away, Heath gave one last yank and tore himself free. He was about to jump back into the fight as we saw the beast spit a beam of its slime at Toralei, but she dodged with impressive flight speed. Unfortunately, that meant the thick stream of muck soared past her, struck a row of distant homes, and collapsed the roofs of several buildings in the village. As soon as she saw that, it was as if a heat wave started spilling off Toralei's body. Once again, Toralei activated her lightning ability. This time, it was as if the entire storm started spiraling in towards her. The clouds spun above her, and dozens of bolts of lightning cracked down towards her, meeting in the air over her head. The monster was lunging up to chomp her in its maw as she let loose all that compiled electricity into a massive eruption that fired right into the beast's throat. Lightning sparked all around its body, and it burned from the inside out. The stench of searing slime wafted across the field as the Tyrnamuk crashed to the ground.
Is it dead?
My concern for this mage's power suddenly elevated that much more. If she could outdo Heath in combat, then I needed to find out quickly if she truly could be trusted,
I hope it ain't
and
dead.
decide what to do if she couldn't be. On top of that, I was sad to see the Tyrnamuk slain. I have on multiple occasions felt it necessary to slay a monster to protect the innocent, but I preferred to let them live and find a place they can thrive in without harming any innocent civilians. I used my runes to rid us of the hailstorm, and we walked over to meet Toralei near the beast as she hovered down to the ground. She had a proud grin on her face, and that just irritated me even further. The death of this creature should not be celebrated. Finally, though, as we approached her, Heath gave me the hint I needed as to why she set me so far from ease. He said nothing but tapped my shoulder so I'd look at him, then gestured his head up. I followed his gaze to see a black and blue bird flying above us. It looked somewhat like a raven, but was far enough that I couldn't tell for certain. I wasn't sure what I was meant to get from it at first, until I noticed a faint blue streak of light following it, trailing from its forehead. That instantly brought forth the memory I needed, and I practically stopped in my tracks, looking back towards Toralei. Well, seems like that's all taken care of. Thanks for all the help with the weather. I'm not normally nearly that powerful, but your storm really helped. I'd offer you lads a meal for your troubles, but you probably don't want to stick around here with how foul that smell is. Probably gonna take us weeks to get rid of it.
Who are you?
I tried to respond as naturally as I could, knowing that Heath and I were likely of the same mind on what needed doing. Oh, no, that's alright. We're not going to leave you with all the cleanup alone. We have some allies who could be of great assistance in this matter. Heath had quickly tapped through some of the menus on his watch and was quietly saying into it,
Hey, gang, we could use some help with a bit of a...
Oh, fair enough, ass. Toralei groaned, waving her hands at Heath. All the grass around him suddenly grew into massive green vines and wrapped around him, binding his mouth and pulling his arms down. Shoulda known you were gonna figure it out, but I can't have you lads calling the Reaper on me. I heard how she's already finished off Suvastarif, and I don't plan on leaving this party so soon. I pulled the sword from my belt and held it forth. You're an Archon demon. She rolled.
That's what she is, an Archon demon, right? Like the TV guy. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Rolled her eyes. Yes, very good. Fantarel's my name, but I'm starting to prefer Toralei. I told the folks here that was my name, and now after all this time, I'm starting to like the ring to it. And would you put that away? You know better than to think that little toy'll do anything to me. She was right. So far, the only thing we knew could do lethal damage to any of the 7 Archon demons was our team leader, Alexis, and her abilities as the Reaper of the Multiverse. How long have you been in my world? Oh, on and off for months now. Ever since we Archons took on physical forms, really. This universe has always been one of my favorites. Watched it grow from the other side for millennia. I've essentially used it as a home base when I'm not gallivanting around the multiverse, and frankly I plan on staying here for many more years to come. Tried to stay off your radar for as long as I could, even with my presence waking up so many powerful beasties to come looking for me, like Slimy here. But now that you finally found me, you and I have got some things to discuss. She swirled her hands once more, and this time blue runes, almost like that of an overseer's, appeared before her palms, and a massive blade manifested in the air, right above my head. Now you're going to send a big guy here home, and if he comes back with any of your friends, especially the Reaper, I will make sure to cut you in half before I deal with her. Understand? She waved her hand and the vines around Heath shrunk away, releasing him.
Yeah, not a chance I'm leaving Tayrin alone with you, demon.
She just turned and looked at me, waiting. I didn't like that she had control of this situation, but I knew she truly did. And admittedly, I had questions for her that I got the sense she may actually be willing to answer. I turned to Heath. Go.
He did seem to enjoy living in this realm, and doesn't seem to be wanting to cause trouble. Trouble just naturally happens. I'm not saying I trust her immediately out the wazoo. I'm saying keep an eye, but you don't have to keep an eye.
If I don't come back to the Shark Tank in precisely 1 hour or less, then you can return for me with backup. He clearly didn't like it, but did as I asked. Soon, it was just myself and the Archon. Why didn't I know that you were here? I should always be able to tell when someone transports into the world I oversee. She paced around me as we spoke, as if trying to make me feel more trapped by her. Oh, please, Terran, we Archons can do many things most beings can't. You know that. But it does seem a lot of the monsters in this world could tell I was here. I hadn't anticipated that, to be honest. But they'll get used to me once I'm the overseer of this world, I'm sure. I inadvertently growled at her as I said, I'd sooner end my own life than allow you to take that role from me. Oh, I'm sure you would, but you should know that Psychoperdelict has figured out how to take an overseer's abilities from them anyhow. If I simply wanted to just take them from you, I could get his help. Not that I'd ever willingly go to that Egypt for anything. You see, Overseer, I'm not like the rest of my fellow Archons. Destroying the multiverse is no fun to me. I led some armies on some sieges of other realms a few times over the last few months, but it did nothing for me. Perhaps I'm not as ambitious as the rest of them, but all I want is this world to myself, to run as I please. Well, that is never going to be an option for you. Now that my allies know you're here, even if you killed me, they'd keep coming here as many times as they needed to. Even if you did take my Overseer ability somehow and try to lock this world off, Alexis could still get through as the Reaper. Toralei continued pacing, getting uncomfortably close. Yes, I'm aware. Why do you think we're talking right now? You and I are going to make a little deal. A wager, a challenge of sorts. If you win, you can kill me. One more Archon down. If I win, however, you willingly give me the Overseer abilities for this world. And promise that none of your little friends, including the Reaper, ever come here hunting me. You Archons are demons of deception. Why would I ever agree to any wager with you? She stopped right in front of me. A fair point you make, so how about a gift of good faith? She pulled a knife off her belt, grabbed my hand, and set the hilt of the blade into it. Now give me a little cut in the arm with that. Curiously, I set the blade to her skin, and it instantly started to steam against her flesh. She winced as I sliced the blade across, then lifted it away. There was indeed a cut. That thing won't work on any of the other Archons, but it can let anyone holding it hurt me. So even if I'm lying to you, you're at least getting one step closer to gutting me, right? I rolled the blade over in my hand. It could have been a trick, but she seemed genuine. Alright, so what is this challenge you have in mind? She smiled widely. Well, that beast summoner ability of yours is really something. And as it turns out, I have 5 beasts of my own that I've used to lead each of my armies. So I wager you this. You create a team of 5 monsters for yourself, the best you can find in this world, then we have ourselves...
Oh, monster v monster. Now that's what I like.
...a little competition to see who has the best beast allies. Your 5 versus my 5, one-at-a-time battles. Whoever finishes off the opponent's monsters first wins, and takes the spoils of victory. How does that sound to ya? She held out her hand, and I just stared at it. I couldn't recall any situation in which making a deal with a demon had been depicted as a good idea. And yet, I was deeply considering it. But the thing that finally sold me on it was something I never would have thought I'd hear her say. Seeing my hesitation, she said, Please, even if I do win, isn't this better than having another Archon out there wreaking havoc in the multiverse? It wasn't even just the justification, it was that first...
I guess he's technically right.
...word. I never would have considered a demon to say such a genuine please. Again, it could have been simply effective manipulation from a demon of deception, but
most likely,
if it was manipulation,
I'd say,
then it was working. So, I took her hand, and I shook. You have a deal, but I need time to prepare my team of summons. Take all the time you need, as long as you don't bother me before the fight. I'll likely be hanging out here if you need me. And just so you have a taste of what you need to beat. She then flashed her fingers into a series of shapes and pressed her thumb to my forehead. Brief images of 5 fierce and horrifying monsters flashed through my mind. They were only brief glimpses, but I could tell they were the monsters Toralei would be using. When my sight pulled back out of my mind, the demon was already walking away back towards the village. After that, I returned to the shark tank and told Heath and our allies about what I just agreed to do. They too had some hesitations, but all agreed they'd give whatever support they could in my new search to find and align with the most powerful and reliable beasts I could to summon for this critical challenge. And I figured, while I would elicit the help of many of my allies in this quest, the true first person I should talk to was the previous overseer of my world. A man I certainly had my share of grievances with, but who had at least been...
I mean, I guess it would make sense, because if the guy was the overseer of the world far before you, then he would know of all the monsters in the realm. So he'd be the best to go to for, well, everything.
Instead on a more positive life course after joining the crew of a certain very jovial pirate captain named Trenton A. Darrable.
Alright, and like always, that is an amazing-ass postal. Alright, what you got to end this?
I hope you enjoyed the setup episode for the Summoner's Beasts, because I've got a bunch of fun ideas for this story.
Oh, I
and
enjoyed it.
The redraw this month is going to be set in this storyline as well. If you want to see something similar, I highly recommend checking out my new series Mythal Lethal, which is getting another new episode very soon. It's also set in Multiverse Tales just a very long time ago, with the lead villain of it being Tarsa, Astra's mother. Or if you want more blatantly Pokemon-inspired stuff, you might want to check out the Bayou Knights episodes of Vigilance, especially the most recent one, Bonding with Bayou Knights, which was last month's community redraw. Also, I have done a huge merch drop this weekend. I'm adding more stuff still. Stuff from Vigilance, Mythal Lethal, of course the posters from this episode will be available. But check out the PopCross Studios Teespring store, because there's a lot of new stuff going up there now. And of course, if you like my monster art, there's always my Monsters of the Multiverse art book, which has tons of my best monster art in there. All that linked in the description.
It's good.
But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote from Adam Grant, who said, "You can love people without liking them. You can also learn from people without liking them. And equally importantly, you can dislike people without disrespecting them." I think that's a really good message that I don't know if I necessarily need to add anything to. I hope it's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.
Well, everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all you folks next time when we flick back on. This is Fox, signing out. Peace.